Hello and welcome to another episode of Crushing Comics, the show where I fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. I have picked an incredibly heavy volume today to open up. It's got to be multiple books. I don't think I own anything that is this big all on its own. How many? I don't know. So, as we're opening this, I was thinking about what is the oldest thing that you have in your house? My family came to the United States from Italy in the, I guess, like in the World War I era, because my grandparents were born here, and they were born in the 20s. And I don't have anything of theirs. I maybe have like one photo and a photo album. But the reason I mention that is because unless I was like super into antiquing or some other collection of an old thing, I wouldn't have anything from my family that was older than that. Like, I guess there's the chance that maybe one of them could have come over from Italy and brought something of that nature with them and passed it, you know, to my mother and then to me, but they didn't. So I don't have anything of the family that's that old. So then I have to think, like, well, the oldest thing I probably have is probably some kind of collectible, right? Other than photographs. Probably the oldest thing I have is probably some old comic book maybe, but the oldest comic books I have are from the late 60s. And so I don't know, I've just been thinking about that and how I've now brought all these things with me to a different place. And so think about it. What is the oldest thing that you have in your house right now? And is it something that was given to you in like a passed down kind of way? Or it is something that you acquired? So the oldest thing in this house actually is not mine, it's my wife's. And it's a bowl that was her grandmother's that is like fine Chinese china. And like the china, like a serving bowl, but it's huge. It's like this big. And she loves it, and because it's a piece of her family's history. So she has that kind of thing, and I don't. And it just got me thinking about what the oldest thing in your house will be. Is it books, right? For some people, chances are that it's books. Or like some antique piece of furniture. Oh my goodness. I really wrapped the heck out of them. Oh my gosh, what is it? What are they? Oh, Fantastic Four by John Byrne. God, these are huge. These are, oh my gosh, they're even huger than I remember. So this is volume 1. And this is, I can't even lift them both up at the same time. This is volume 2. And I think we're going to cover them both in one episode, because I don't know that I have so much to say about the run as a whole. So, the Fantastic Four, right? They had been Marvel's marquee team. It was Stan Lee writing it, you know, past issue 100, his legendary partnership with Jack Kirby. And here's the thing, the books are just good. They're just really, really good comic books. I've reread some of them recently, and they hold up. I mean, they're still Silver Age. They still have the signs of the times in them, but they're extraordinarily good. So then Stan Lee leaves, and Fantastic Four still has some interesting plots. There's still some cool Inhuman stuff that happens. You know, they've got a young child at this point, but I don't know that the hundreds of Fantastic Four are as, like, must-read as the first 100 issues, right? So Fantastic Four is doing its thing, it's still selling, it's still a popular Marvel title, and John Byrne takes over. Now this is John Byrne in the immediate wake of doing the Dark Phoenix saga with Chris Claremont at Marvel. So this is starting around, I think we're talking early 80s here, and progressing from there. And John Byrne takes over this team that's the first family, and he proceeds to write it from the beginning of this, which is Fantastic Four 209, all the way to, I think it's like 294 or 295, the next one. This is heavier than like having a pair of twins, 295. So he writes the Fantastic Four for about 90 issues, which is a pretty long run at that point. And he does great things for the team. He modernizes them. They had sort of become this very kind of like repetitive, tropish version, still very readable of who the four of them were, but John Byrne, with the longevity of this run, allows them all to change a little bit, and allows the team to change, right? This is the run during which the Thing decides that he's going to stay behind on Battleworld in Secret Wars, and She-Hulk joins the Fantastic Four. Now that wasn't unprecedented. We had characters replacing Invisible Woman when she was on her pregnancy leave, including, I guess it was Crystal or Medusa. It might have, I forget which one of them it was. But John Byrne gives us that. John Byrne also really just draws the ever-living heck out of this title. He was incredible on X-Men, but he is really just turning in amazing, amazing work throughout this book. And this was something that Marvel was somewhat surprising in having omnibus, because it already existed in trade paperback version in this John Byrne Visionaries. And Marvel used to use Visionaries as a way to pump out issues that were of a run of a certain artist, but Marvel didn't commit to them being continuous the way they do in an artist. So in an omnibus. So George Perez, there are Fantastic Four George Perez Visionaries, which are now covered by Marvel Masterworks, but if he didn't write an issue or draw an issue, it skipped it. John Byrne didn't skip any issues, so those were very, very complete. So it was kind of like a nice surprise to get these omnibuses and to get them, you know, so complete and in relatively short order, 1, 2. So you do have one other way that you can collect us. So those Visionaries are really, really out of print at this point. And do these have much extra material in them? Let's see. Got some magazine covers, some designs, but really not a whole ton of extra material. So now we come to, do I recommend hunting these down, right? Because they've been out of print for a while. And my answer to that is kind of twofold. One of them doesn't have to do with the Fantastic Four in specific, one of them does. So in specific to the Fantastic Four, I would say that it depends on the era of comics that you like, right? If you love Silver Age comics, you should be getting the Stan Lee Kirby ones in 3 omnibuses. And there's no omnibuses of the 90s one, and there's a lot to say for the 90s run of Fantastic Four. I actually quite like it. But if you really love Fantastic Four and you're like, what do I read if I love Fantastic Four? There are very few definitive answers to that. One of them is Lee Kirby. One of them is, of course, Hickman. And in between that, there's really just this, and a lot of people really like the Mark Waid run. So you're probably going to read one of the 4, and if you're into comics of this era, you would probably get this one. The Hickman one reads fine to just pick it up on its own, and I'm sad that I'm never going to get to show you it on the show. I sold it before I moved because I have it in other formats, and it seemed like an easy thing to part with, but I kind of regret it a little bit, and I don't like to regret things in life, but those are some amazing books, and I'm probably never going to get them again because, oh my gosh, are they expensive. Probably should have just not sold them if I wanted to keep them. But in any event, I would say that this would be the Fantastic Four run. Now, if you're thinking just in terms of like, I want a good run of comics to read, this is really the pinnacle of Team as Family and Marvel in the 80s, right? Claremont was kind of doing that on X-Men, but that was more Team as soap opera, which I would say is kind of different than making it a family affair. And this the quality stays so high, it runs so long with such consistency, and it really is one of the truly remarkable products of early 80s Marvel. I'd be hard-pressed, really, to name, I'm trying to think, like, other than this and Uncanny X-Men. Doctor Strange was good at that point, but having read a lot of that Doctor Strange, it doesn't have the solidified arc that this does. Of course, Master of Kung Fu had been running in that period, and that one is something that's really good, but that runs over the course of like a decade. This is, you know, a much shorter, more contained run by Byrne. So I would say that if you're really into 80s Marvel, this is probably the tops of what you can get collected after Chris Claremont on Uncanny X-Men. So this is Fantastic Four by John Byrne and nobody else. Volumes 1 and 2, and here is its ceremonial shelving. I really should have a scale in here for this so I can weigh these as we do them, because oh my gosh, those are heavy and huge. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Crushing Comics as I continue to fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. Tune in next time for more unwrapping. Thank you so much for watching.